and to be on the other side of that little lake, and we knew they were there. We were this buddy that lived there. It started getting dark, and he ran home all the way because of an experience he had when he was 9 years old. There's just on the other side of the tracks, they call it Deadman's Hill, and there's a cemetery up on top, and some of the stones date, the early 1700s. I think there was one that said 1692, and they're sunken where everything's dead up there. There's no grass, the trees don't grow, and supposedly when he was 9 years old, he had a tent out behind his house by himself, and about 11 o'clock at night he decided to take a walk, and there was a sheep farm over there, and he crossed the tracks, started up this hill with a flashlight, and there were about halfway up the hill were dead sheep all around the whole hill, like in a circle. And as he got to the top, and he saw the stones, and now he was scared, and he started back down, and he said that he saw this thing with a big lamb in its arms, and he never really explained what it was, but after that he would never camp out there.
White haze it was, And then another question. We went to another place last night. It was on a mounds, but it's also what the locals around here call it Deadman's Hill. And there's a vortex there, naturally, and of course the nut trees and everything you said to look for. All right, it was all there. But the strange thing about it is I had to, we were watching the cell phone because of the fact that I had to be back to do a show. Well, one of the girls says, she gave the time of 7:33, and so we had to get back. And so, but when we got back into the car, off that vortex, got back into the car, the car clock said 7:19. And I says, and then Brad looked at his watch, and it was 7:19 or something like that. And then she looked back at her cell phone, and her cell phone now said 7:19. But when we were up there, her cell phone said 7:33. Then it switched back to 7:19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you crossed into another dimension when you were there.
We crossed into another dimension?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what happened. So, and that dimension was at a different time, or?
Yeah, it's at a different time. It's like a lot of times people will have, not a lot of times, virtually everyone alive is having parallel lives in at least 5 and as many as 13 dimensions at one time.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the time is the same in those other dimensions. Sometimes in fact, usually it's a little bit different. So if you went into a place where you crossed into another dimension, essentially a portal, you cross into another dimension, then the time is different there. You might be able to see things around you that were at least close enough that you felt like you were in the same place. Places like that can be kind of interesting. Sometimes you have to be careful to walk back out of in the same place you walked in, and you wind up in someplace else entirely.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, well, I think we got back in the right place. Because you never know with dimensions, do you? But you never know with parallel dimensions, do you?
No.
Because they could be so similar to the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
But you're obviously back here because we're having this conversation.
Yeah, maybe. Or you're in that one, too. He gets kind of, and then Sharon had noticed that she kept seeing things moving around on the side of her eyes, corner of her eyes up there too. So, which was?
A lot of times you can see things, better in the spirit realm from your peripheral vision than you can by looking straight at them.
Okay.
There is an amazing place called by the Burlington locals Deadman's Hill. It is a few miles outside of Burlington. I learned of this area from a gentleman that wishes to be called Bruce, who came into my office to report a Bigfoot sighting he had there when he was a young man. He also said that the Wisconsin werewolf, known as the Bray Road beast, had also been spotted there, carrying off under his arms 2 dead sheep. Knowing that some believe that the Bigfoot and creatures such as the Bray Road beast have been reported to be hiding within the dimensional veils, I got a few people together and went out to the area to check it out for possible portals. These doorways would allow such creatures to move freely about, going in and out of the worlds as they desired. Deadman's Hill was named after an old cemetery that was built on what looks to be an ancient tubuli or mound. Of course, to those just passing by, this mound would probably look like a small rounded hill. Knowing the great powers of the portal area, the Native American Indians used them as sacred burial grounds. Later on, the Europeans built their cemeteries on the sacred area, as was the case on Deadman's Hill. The tombstones now lay knocked down and broken by the cattle grazing there. You could see indentations in the ground caused by the earth settling in around the old graves. Arriving at the top of the mound or hill, we found an ancient altar stone that points to the winding river below. I photographed the girls standing next to this stone. Later, looking at the photos, I realized that each of the girls were emitting a glowing blue light around their bodies. Apparently, this stone is quite powerful, giving off tremendous energy. The Native Americans have a name for these stones. They are called Manitou stones, or spirit stones. According to Herman E. Bender of Mid-America Geographic Foundation, in Manitou stones in Wisconsin, the stones together with their physical settings were considered sacred. A certain quality remained as they still retained the power vested in them. In earlier years, these stones were quite common, but were later destroyed by early missionaries while they were converting the pagan way of the American Indian to Christianity. More were destroyed through agriculture and clearing. There is also evidence that some were intentionally tipped in a deliberate attempt to disguise their use. Yet as late as 1880s, gifts or offerings were still being left at the stones that survived. So the next time you encounter a rock which seems to speak to you, consider the spirit Manitou that lives within and give some sort of offering. I use tobacco or candy, but anything will do, as long as it comes from the heart. Even a strand of your hair is considered a good offering. It's not the gift, but the intent of the gift that matters. As we stood at the top of the mound, we immediately sensed the vortex. We also noticed that the trees were twisted and gnarled from the years of spinning vortex energies. We also found nut trees there, which is another good indication of a vortex area. Not only did we feel the sensations of the vortex, but we actually stepped into a parallel universe. This dimension was so similar to ours that we could have never known about it if not for one of the researchers, Patty, who had been watching the time. Fortunately, I had a radio show to do later on that evening, and Patty was keeping track of time for me so that I wouldn't be late getting back to the center. At one point in time, she looked at her cell phone, exclaiming that we had to leave as it was already 7:33, and we were running late. Hearing this, we headed back down off the mound area and back to the car. The distance wasn't far, and it only took us about 2 to 3 minutes to complete the journey back. After we arrived at the car, one of the girls, Sharon, announced that Patty was off on her time. Sharon said that, according to her clock on the dashboard of the car, the time was only 7:18. This was a 15-minute time difference. While the girls were arguing over the time difference, I had Brad check out the time he had on his watch. His watch also read 7:18. Well, Patty grabbed her cell phone to take one more look. To her and all of our amazement, her cell phone now read, just like Sharon and Brad's, the time 7:18. It had actually switched back from 7:33 to 7:18. How strange is that? Well, you were about to find out. Fortunately for us, I was doing a show with Dr. Alford, who is familiar with space-time distortion and portals. I related the story to Clifford about our time experience at Deadman's Hill. He explained that we had stepped into a parallel dimension while on the hill, a dimension almost exact to ours, except that it was 15 minutes into our future. He then went on to tell me that while we were in the other world, we should have seen things moving about through our peripheral vision. As he said this, I remembered back to Sharon making comments to us about seeing just this type of phenomena. He also said we were lucky that we came out the same way as we went in, or we could have been stuck in that world permanently. After listening to Clifford, I now make sure to exit a portal area the same way as I went in. We were lucky that day. We found the portals, we entered, experienced it, and came out safely to bear witness that such places do exist. This is Mary Sutherland speaking on Deadman's Hill, which is about 5 minutes outside of Burlington, Wisconsin, off Spring Prairie Road, just maybe less than a mile from the Burlington Woods, what we call the Haunted Woods. The following are two audio files that I did. One is the audio file of a gentleman that we will refer to as Bruce, explaining the experiences that he had and another gentleman had on Deadman's Hill with the Bray Road beast and the Bigfoot. The second audio will be of my interview I did with Dr. Clifford Alford concerning our experiences that we had with the stepping into time, into the future of 15 minutes.